Welcome to Epg Pad I am Jeevan Kumar, Assistant Professor, Department of Public Policy, Law and Governance, Central University of Rajasthan. Today we are going to learn about a new concept called hierarchy in a course Public Administration and Introduction. The objectives of this module are to understand the concept of hierarchy and to discuss the features, advantages and disadvantages of hierarchy, and to examine the attempts made by different organizations to overcome the demerits of hierarchy. The presentation is divided into the following. We will look at the meaning of hierarchy in the first part, and then we will move on to the features of hierarchy, and then in the third part we will look into some of the advantages as well as the disadvantages of hierarchy. In the last section we try to explore the measures taken by some of the organizations to overcome the defects of hierarchy and examine the new modes of hierarchy that are existing in now with reference to governance. Now we look at the meaning of the concept of hierarchy. Students, the concept of hierarchy can be traced to Greek, where it derived from two words, one hieros and the other one archein. What is hieros? Hieros means sacred and archein means rule or order. They may look odd to you. How do we need to do about sacredness in public organizations? There is a reason. These two words are related to the Christian faith, in which there is a hierarchy of God followed by archangel and angels. We also can understand that the origin of the concept of hierarchy is akin to the Christian faith and belief. Similar to the hierarchy in the Christian denominations, the organizations in public sector also will have a hierarchy. In other words, they have certain order or they have certain rule. There are certain layers in a particular organizations. To put it in simple words, that hierarchy is about a rule and order in a particular organizations. Hierarchy denotes that there are certain layers, there are certain grades of officers who are given particular authority to discharge particular responsibilities. Having said that, we see that in 21st century, almost all public organizations, for that matter even private organizations, follow the principle of hierarchy. Either in practice or in principle, they are following this hierarchy. Therefore, for the student of public administration, it is essential to look into the meanings and definitions of hierarchy. If you look into the public administration literature, we find that the classic public administrators theories have emphasized hierarchy as a central theme in organizational theory. Most importantly, Max Weber has enunciated the principle of hierarchy to understand the legal rational authority. What is this legal rational authority? The legal rational authority is the foundation on which the modern public organizations are established. These organizations follow the principle of hierarchy in terms of there is a gradation of officers at each level. Literally, we see that hierarchy means control of superior over the subordinates, or in other words, control of the higher officials over the lower officials. We can see that in organizations there are certain gradations and there are certain ladders or certain layers. Therefore, it is called as a scalar process by Mooney and Rayleigh. Like in a scale, how we have different gradations and different scales, you also have different scales in public organizations. This is how we can understand the concept of hierarchy. If we go to the meaning of a dictionary, Oxford English Dictionary defines hierarchy as a body of persons or things ranked in grades, orders, or classes, one above the other. As we have seen in few minutes back, that public organizations are organized from the top to bottom. Top managers, middle managers, and lower level subordinates. There is a scale. There is a process in which power flows from the top to the bottom. There is a command that flows from the top to bottom. So it is called a scalar process. Students, now let us look at some of the meanings and definitions given by different scholars in public administration. I will read out each one by one. First, we will see what L.D. White says about hierarchy. For him, hierarchy consists in the universal application of superior subordinate relationships through number of level of responsibility reaching from top to bottom of the structure. What is the emphasis of this definition? In this definition, the emphasis is the superior and subordinate relationships. When you have an hierarchy, when you have a rule or an order, that order is superior above and subordinates below. So the power flows from the top to the bottom. That is how you have superior and subordinate relationship. They reach from top to the bottom. We also have another scholar, Paul Appleby, who defined hierarchy in terms of resources, how they are apportioned, how personnel are selected, and how they are assigned, how operations are activated, reviewed, and modified. The emphasis here is on resources, how they are distributed according to the level of a particular officers. In a particular organization, we see that officers' level determines their position, their pay, their benefits, everything. That is how gradation takes place. We can find in public organizations at the lower rungs of administration, they have least resources. As we move up and up, the middle managers and top managers will be having large number of resources with them to function. And most importantly, we look at the Weber, who is the pioneer of the theory of bureaucracy, who proposed that hierarchy is one of the important characteristics of bureaucracy. To him, hierarchy is the organization of offices that follows the principle of hierarchy, that is, each lower office is under the control and supervision of higher one. Here, the emphasis is gradation, one superior, one subordinate. What does it imply? That superior orders these subordinates, and the subordinates have to obey the orders given by the superior. That is what even all the public organizations do follow in the 21st century. And J.D. Millett also defined hierarchy as the efforts of individuals which are gathered together. In a hierarchical organization, efforts of all individuals from the lower to the top are put together to achieve a particular goal. So, hierarchy is relevant to achieve particular goals. And if you put it in terms of a figure, you see that hierarchy forms a pyramidal structure because the power flows from top to the bottom. This is what we can see in hierarchy. This is what a traditional view of hierarchy. Having said that, we'll see how hierarchy can be understood. In order to understand hierarchy, we can look at two views. There are two views proposed by the scholars. One view is conventional view. The other one is instrumental view. Let me discuss what are these views. Conventional view is based on Weberian notions of legal authority. Legal authority is a kind of authority proposed by Weber after traditional and charismatic authority. When rules and procedures are the important pillars of public administration or organization, you see that hierarchy exists certainly. And you also see in the example that I gave that there is a chain of command which works like a glue if you follow the principle of hierarchy. In the process of communication, no subordinate or no individual is left out of this chain of command, and the power is flowed from top to the bottom. Then we look at the alternate view of hierarchy, that is instrumental hierarchy. If you look at the first view of hierarchy, you see that the superior and subordinates have unequal relationship. There is a scope for delay. There is a scope for bossism if you go by the conventional view of hierarchy. The conventional view of hierarchy is attacked by these scholars like Herbert Simon. He proposed this in instrumental view. According to him, hierarchy is not an end. Hierarchy is a means. Hierarchy has to be analyzed in the context of its role to achieve a particular goal. So, hierarchy, according to him, should be used to maximize its role to get the work done. In other words, he says that the superior and subordinate should have a mutual consent and a mutual trust, which is missing in the conventional view of hierarchy. He sees hierarchy as a role only. Once the role is finished, there is no question of hierarchy at all. Here we find that the public organizations and private organizations differ in terms of following the views of hierarchy. In 21st century, most of the public organizations still follow the conventional view of hierarchy, whereas the private organizations are more in favor of following the second view, because in the flat organizations, the communication is easier. This view of hierarchy is voluntaristic. This view of hierarchy facilitates participation of subordinates, facilitate egalitarian access to the bosses. And this view facilitates human interaction between the subordinate and his or her immediate boss. Students, so far we try to understand the meaning of hierarchy and the definitions given by the scholars. And also we try to look at two perspectives of hierarchy. One is conventional, the other one is instrumental. Having said that, let me give you an example in the subsequent discussions. Now we see the features of hierarchy. One of the important principles of this hierarchy is through proper channel. Let me take 2 minutes to give you an example on this. For example, in a university, a researcher has to apply for a fellowship. And what is the proper channel or a through channel is that first he or she has to approach the supervisor, and supervisor has to sign. After that, it will go to the head of the department, then it goes to the dean, and so forth. That means the letter of communication is done through proper channel. And the second feature is that there is unity of command in the hierarchical organization. That means a subordinate is accountable to a single subordinate. There is no breaking of this hierarchy in public organizations. At each level, the authority is divided and the authority is commensurated with the responsibility. In other words, at each level, the officer is entrusted with the responsibility and also given the power to carry out the responsibilities and functions given to him or her. And in hierarchy, there is a subordinate and superior. The superior will issue orders and the subordinate has to obey the orders and act accordingly. Let us go back to the figure that I have shown earlier. The hierarchical organizations are very broad at base, but as you move up, it becomes narrow, and the power tends to concentrate as we move to the top levels of administrations. Similarly, status, authority, salary, perks, everything depending upon the different structures of administration and the officer who are holding the responsibility to carry out the particular functions. What are the advantages and disadvantages of this particular concept of hierarchy? The first advantage of hierarchy is that all the channels, all the levels of administrations are kept intact because there is no breakage of communication between each level. It is easy to track where a particular file is pending because the channel of communication is well established and the proper channel is well defined there. It becomes easier for communication. And there is also division of labor at each level. What a subordinate has to do, what a middle manager has to do, and what the top manager has to do. Authority is fixed at each level. Therefore, it is easy to pin down the failure on a particular officer, if any. And the next advantage is that the following of the hierarchy allows to have efficiency in the administrative systems because there is a scope for discipline among the subordinates, including the superiors. Nobody can break the channel. And it helps to clarify the positions, roles, and responsibilities as I discussed earlier. It saves time because it is easy to track an application in the entire channel of communication and the entire chain of command. It is easy to arrive at consensus among the employees because the top manager can easily motivate the middle managers, and middle managers will take the responsibility of bringing consensus among the subordinates. That's how division of labor will help in arriving at the consensus. Students, now we look at some of the demerits of hierarchy. Following hierarchy leads to the delay in getting things done because there are so many layers at each level. If a file is moved at the subordinate level, by the time it reaches the subordinate whose approval is final, it may take months. I'll give an example. Look at the police machinery. There are about 10 levels of gradation. Now it has, at a state level, we have DGP, Director General of Police, then Inspector General, then Deputy Inspector General, Superintendent of Police, then Deputy Superintendent of Police, Circle Inspector, Sub Inspector, Additional Sub Inspector, Head Constable and Constable. You see, there are about 10 levels of grades and 10 levels of officers. Imagine a decision is supposed to be taken very quickly. If the file has to move from down to 10 layers of administration, how much time it takes? So it may cause delays. Then the other one is because the public organizations rely upon the formal relations. There is a possibility that the relationship between the superior and subordinates are more of artificial than natural. It may lead to the distrust between the superior and subordinates. And the following this principle is also lead to the following of too much of rigid procedures and too much of formalism, where the subordinates may not be really putting their heart in the work. So they tend to become so formal and they may be lost in the formalism because the human relations are missing in that. The hierarchy also leads to red tapeism because there is a scope for delay. The scope for delay leads to red tape. As we have seen, that hierarchy leads to delay in the process because of so many structures. It leads to red tapeism. It leads to corruption because it gives ample scope for different individuals to intervene in getting things done. Thereby, they try to take benefit out of the delay that is there. For example, more importantly, one of the disadvantages of hierarchy is that it kills initiative. It doesn't allow for participation of the subordinates. It goes against the principle of flexibility, and it cannot be adaptive to the existing situation, and it will not be in a position to amend itself to the changing context. And environmental changes are not that easy to be adapted by the organizations who follow the hierarchy in spirit. It's true that hierarchy allows the employees to be disciplined. However, the top-down manner will always be helping the organization to achieve goals, particularly in a century where the decentralization is the mode of governance. It also leads to the disinterested among the individuals who are part and parcel of the organization because it kills initiative, it doesn't allow them to participate, it doesn't allow them to have a collaboration among themselves because all the relations are very formal in nature. Hierarchy leads to the inaptness and inherent weaknesses within the organization because it is not in a position to change itself to the changes in the environment that are taking place, because it is very rigid. Students, having discussed all these advantages and disadvantages, let us try and see what are the recent developments that are taking place. We are moving to the last part of our discussions on hierarchy. The principle of hierarchy has been questioned by several scholars in recent times, and the efficacy of its application in public organizations has come to be criticized. For instance, Guy Peters and Vincent Wright, they have looked at the fundamental changes that have taken place with regard to the assumption of hierarchy. Hierarchy leads to the taller organizations. Hierarchy goes against the principle of team leadership and team spirit. 21st century organizations can no longer work on that principle, because too much of bossism, too much of formalism may not lead to the efficient functioning of an organization, because human relations approach says that individuals are not cogs in the wheels. They are humane. There need to be trust among the subordinates and the superior. In this debate, there were doubts that were raised by the scholars whether really hierarchy can be applied in the 21st century organizations. If you look at the private organizations, we see that they do not have large number of hierarchies in the system. There were certain developments this contributed to these doubts. What are they? For example, reinventing government movement seeks to have flat organization, the bureaucracy which is less in number, the bureaucracy which is having least number of grades or levels is the best. And added to that, marketization and outsourcing of public services is seen as an alternative to the principle of hierarchy that is followed in public organizations. If you take any non-state organizations or an NGO or private organizations, it is likely to find a few number of hierarchies in that, because they want to achieve results by using less number of employees and breaking the channels of communications. Therefore, they can be effective. These are some of the doubts that were expressed about the principle of hierarchy. Here we will find some of the measures taken by the scholars to overcome the demerits of hierarchy. Among them, Henry Fayol is the one who proposed certain alternatives to avoid these merits. Now here we have to learn two concepts. One is gangplank, the other one is level jumping. Let us see what they mean by. The gangplank says, instead of crossing all these channels of communication, it is better to have a horizontal communication between F and K. That is how line of authority is reduced. This is called gangplank. And the second concept that is proposed to overcome this demerit is level jumping. So instead of going to E, D, C, B, F can bypass D with the permission of D to communicate to K. Therefore, it jumps one level of superiority. However, this jumping can be done with the prior permission and intimation of the immediate subordinates. In the Indian context, the government of India attempted level jumping in the public organizations, whereby it leads to lower levels of bureaucracies. Students, here we need to discuss some of the important developments that contribute to these debates. The first one is new public management. The new public management seeks to have direct relationship between the superior and subordinate instead of having many layers, because new public management seeks to get things done with the least cost and with the least bureaucratic approaches. The second one is market-based solutions. Seek the output to be delivered, but not the process. And the new mode of governance that are emerging, for example, networks governance. Now, governance is seen as a networks, where by networking with the state, civil society and market, it is easy for delivery of goods and services. Not necessarily one has to go to all the 9 levels of administration to get a single document approved, as we have seen in the earlier examples. So, new public management, market-based solutions, outsourcing some of the services, bypassing the many channels and networks. These are some of the measures that were conceived to overcome the demerits of hierarchy. Students, in this module, we try to understand the meaning of hierarchy. Hierarchy came from 2 words, hieros and archin. It means a rule of order in a particular organizations. Hierarchy is a central theme of public organizations on which they thrive. There are 2 views of hierarchy. One is conventional, the other one is instrumental. Conventional view of hierarchy believes in the legal rational authority, whereas the instrumentalist view believes in the voluntaristic view of hierarchy. There are certain advantages and disadvantages of hierarchy. The best advantage is discipline among the subordinates and the clear-cut communication. On the other hand, we have demerits because it leads to corruption, it leads to red tapeism. This goes against collaboration and team spirit in public organizations. Attempts have been made to overcome these. Fail proposed gangplank and level jumping to avoid these merits. The advent of new public management, reinventing government, public-private partnership, outsourcing, marketization of services, networks as a governance are seen as some of the alternatives to break the existing hierarchies to deliver goods and services. I hope you understood this lesson. For further details, you may contact the e-text and also follow the web references. Thank you.